referencing and using other people's work in your work. Support sessions. I think I said support 3 times, but that's literally what we're here to do is support. Okay. So everyone, just a quick rundown of what's happening. If you look in the chat now, if you open the chat on the side there, yeah, Sonja, for now while we're doing this, if you can, yeah, I saw that we work well as a team. Thank you. Um, as we're going ahead, like you'll see in the chat, if you open your chat boxes or windows, whatever, you'll see that people are putting in comments there, and the question that was asked to prompt responses is a basic one. Why are you here? Like, what's challenging you with academic writing? So as we go through the session and as Ms. McLachlan does all of this amazing work that she's been doing here for 8 years now, in as part 9 years, Sonja. Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry, 10. I think it's
10.
10.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When I came here in 2014, Sonja was the first person that I also recruited. So I'm thrilled that she's still here. And what I can tell you is that as you go through this, we're asking you for engagement and feedback in the chat so that you can tell us what you need help with. And if it's not in this session, right, if it's not available in the session, because we're looking at referencing and how you are sort of using other people's work to make your points, which is the journey of academic writing. Okay. We want you to consider then reaching out to us separately and sending us an email or a request and asking for more support. Okay. You can also share this with your lecturers, and they are well aware of us. If they're not using us, ask them, motivate them. You, the student, make it move. Okay. So today, I'm very proud to just share that we have Miss Sonja McLachlan here. And Sonja's been here for a while, like I said. And there's a few things that we are going to look at today. Where's my documents? Sorry. No, that's still not the document. The document is you, Sonja. There we go.
Oh, okay.
So, Sonja's been involved with academic literacies since August 2014 when she joined the team. She's a contract lecturer with the Department of Applied Language Studies, DELS, since 2018, and also with Varsity College. I know several people out there who I speak to randomly, and I say that I work with Sonja, and they say, oh, yeah, she's been instrumental in my language development. So, well done, Sonja. Sonja's developed a passion for academic literacies, and when she started lecturing, she experienced the need for extra support in academic writing and referencing. So it was almost perfect that she was already placed within the Academic Literacies Writing Programme. Note that name. We don't call ourselves the Writing Center anymore, okay? Because we do so much more than that now. So Sonja's been here and she's been an integral part of the team. And today, she's dealing with the Harvard Referencing Convention. Something that I would like to just tell everyone about is that another one of the support facilities we have here at Academic Literacies Writing Programme is, well, literally, aside from Microsoft Word, we give you access to the premium version of Grammarly. Now, I know a lot of you have Grammarly loaded on your computers as the free version, and you might have loaded that or signed up, logged in with your Gmail or other addresses, right? If you log in with your Nelson Mandela University address, no, I'm just looking at the chat also, sorry. If you log in with your Nelson Mandela University address or create an account there, and then you send a request to, and look in the chat now, grammarly@mandela.ac.za. If you are a student, what we can do is we can give you 2 weeks access to the premium version of Grammarly, right? When you send us a draft review request, that's when you have an assignment and you need feedback. You send that request to us using the form. Can one of the colleagues please put the request form link into the chat for me, please? If you send it there and you say that you need a draft review and then you attach your draft of your writing, we will review, listen carefully, review, not edit, so we don't change your work. But we give you constructive criticism that helps you to develop your writing and change your work for the better. We also give you a Grammarly report. But you can take this, thank you, we can take this one step further and we can give you access to Grammarly so that you can use all of the features of this amazing function and yeah, like really try to make an effort to improve your writing yourself. Because when you keep shipping it out to other people, they are doing the work that is essentially going to be what you are evaluated on as a professional or as a researcher. Okay, so what we want to encourage here is self development. We are here to facilitate that development. We are here with energy, we are here with a passion, we are here with a real sincerity about wanting to help our students write better. So, from my side, thank you all for turning up. There are going to be some links shared during this chat. Remember, on the Teams chat or platform, everything that you've attended, like a meeting or an event like this, you get access to the chat afterwards. So, all of these links will be there. If there's something that you really think that you must take note of, write it down. Okay? Just write it down and make sure that you are going to follow up on these things afterwards. It's no good we putting all of this, these riches of support resources out here for you, including Miss McLachlan, and you don't engage. So if you have questions, engage. Sonja, thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Gino. Appreciate it. Thank you to Mr. Fransman for the lovely introduction. So it saves me the time and the effort also just to give me a little bit of feedback behind, where I come from. I just want to state quickly, I have put the link to the Academic Literacies Writing Programme right in the beginning of the chat with the feedback thingy, link to the feedback form. So I'm just going to want to share my screen here quickly. Okay, so if you look right in the beginning of the chat, you will see there's, besides the attendance and whatever, there's the forms to, the first one would be the Google's form that for feedback. So please just hang on with that a little while. But I will remind you again, just to complete this feedback form. It's an online form. It's really going to take you a minute or less than that. And the second link here is then the form that you're going to use to submit your draft to the Academic Literacies Writing Programme. So, but I will get back to that again. Regarding the chats, I will get back to that right at the end. Then I'll look at the chats and so on. I first just want to get through the content. I saw quite a valid question there was, which I've actually, yes, Gino.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay.
We should disable my functionality as well. Sorry.
There was a very good question on how to reference, I think the wording was chunk information. And that reminded me actually, so if I skip that and I don't come back to that question, please, because that's a very important question and it's a very important answer, because that is something that I see with my own students, and that a student would only put, say for instance, it's the same source. They would only put, for a whole paragraph, they would put the source at the end of the paragraph after the last sentence, which is, in other words, the rest of the paragraph is plagiarized content. So I don't know if I understood that question, if that was what was meant, but there's two ways of how to alleviate that issue. So I really want to address that. That was a good question. The question that I really didn't understand that well was about footnotes. So essentially, we don't use footnotes in Harvard. So if you could just clarify that question for me as well. All right, but we'll get back to the chats after the session. All right, I'm going to just disable my camera for now and going to continue. So is my screen visible at the moment?
It is. You can
Okay.
make it big screen though.
Yes,
Thank
just
you.
wanted to see if it was visible.
Also,
Okay.
like, let's just encourage the attendees that we do have the emojis. So please, yeah, we see you with your thumbs up and all of these things. Please do so. Thank you.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I just want to say thank you very much for everybody attending. And that helps so much if you know how to reach out and get to people is when you attend these things. So the first thing that I actually want to mention is it's a very simple workshop. So it's not, it's very basic. So I'm going to cover from the start basic, simple steps, if you can put like that. So if you have more complex questions, then rather just, we will get back to that. So it's a very basic thing. So it's easy to understand for everybody, even if you're a first year or even if you're, you know, and you the very first time that you've seen this type of thing or so on. I do know that some students only get to do assignments in the second semester. They haven't touched an assignment, or when they did assignments, they didn't have to do referencing, or many first year students don't have to do referencing. So we keep it simple. Okay. So, firstly, I'm not going to dwell on this right in the beginning now, but we have to look at what is plagiarism and why are we having a workshop on referencing things specifically. That does connect back to plagiarism, obviously. So when you came to university, the very first day, everybody just expect you as a student to know what is plagiarism, what is referencing, and so on. So usually a lot of schools these days, yes, they do some sort of referencing, or not a lot of schools. In PE, I can think of about 4 or 5 schools, maybe that I know definitely do introduce referencing. However, it is more based on a bibliography type of thing, and it's not in-text referencing. So it puts our students at a disadvantage, not knowing what are all these things, because lecturers have to focus on the content. There's not a lot of time that lecturers themselves can spend on explaining all these things. So we need to look at, and then all of a sudden you hear all these words: don't plagiarize, don't use generative AI, don't do this, you have to in-text reference. But what is that? So I just want to explain plagiarism is a lot more than just copying words and passages from the internet. It is a whole lot more than that. That is one little part of plagiarism, because normally if I have a workshop or my own students and I ask what is plagiarism, then that is the answer. It's copying and pasting, and or you don't acknowledge the source. It's a lot more than that. NMU has a very specific policy. We're not going to go in detail with through this, but I need you to acknowledge that there is a policy for the promotion of academic integrity and prevention of plagiarism, and a couple of examples of what plagiarism is, or what is regarded as plagiarism then for the university. So it gives also guidelines to lecturers how to deal with it and so on. So if you look at what is regarded as plagiarism, it's a whole lot more than just copying and pasting. It is, you maybe have paraphrased, but you didn't use an in-text reference because maybe you didn't know you have to put it in there, you don't know how to do it, or forgot, or lack of time management, and you just decided, okay, well, a reference list is what's going to happen today with this thing. So it has to do. So if you don't have in-text references but a reference list, it is still plagiarism. If you have in-text references and not a reference list, it is plagiarism. When you don't paraphrase properly, in other words, you are copying from the internet and you don't put it in your own words, although there is an in-text reference, it is still plagiarism. So we're going to look at, there are 3 elements of avoiding plagiarism. So this policy was put in place before generative AI. So with generative AI, and I'm not going to dwell on that as well, I have things to say about it, and I've got examples, but I'd rather just do that right at the end because the focus here is on Harvard referencing. Okay, so for instance, there's just something here that I need to mention. Like, for instance, if you translated text, you would think, okay, well, that is my own words. I do not need to reference the source because I've translated into my own words. And it can happen. So for instance, if there's an Afrikaans student has found an article written in Afrikaans and and the essay is written in English, and you translate it into English, then it becomes my own work, right? No, no, that is not correct at all. It is plagiarism if you do not acknowledge the source. So when we paraphrase, for instance, it's got nothing to do really with the words. It's everything got to do with the idea that you're taking. And that is the confusion. So when you copy and paste something and put it in your text and use it and then try to paraphrase it, it's often where things go wrong because you're taking the words, not taking the idea. So that idea is still somebody else's, and you need to acknowledge it in whatever language you're putting it, in whatever words you are putting it. The other thing, collusion, is something that it's happened to me before that students, so for instance, my students at NMU, they are law students and it's a large group of students. So they do a group assignment, for instance. 5 people work together. They put their ideas together, they collaborated, and they're going to submit one assignment as the group. But it's happened a couple of times that 2 students break away from the group and use that information and submit it as theirs, whereas they work together as a group. So be careful of things, something like that. That is not allowed. It's a form of plagiarism because you need then to go and do your own thing and your own essay and your own, because it's a deliberate act of then copying and copying somebody else's. Okay, so that is something that students actually sometimes maybe don't realize what is part of this. Okay, we need to always reference images. YouTube clips, those types of things. There shouldn't be YouTube clips or YouTube being used for sources, but it depends on what type of essay it is. It depends on what type of module or program you're doing, that maybe it is allowed, but in general, that would not be regarded as a credible source specifically. Right. So we're going to just touch on this because it is important that you understand what are the elements of plagiarism then as such. So when we look at and global plagiarism, since 2 years ago, when generative AI has come onto South Africa's radar, if I can put it like that, because it's been out there for quite some time in the rest of the world, I think global plagiarism has become a huge thing because it is when you plagiarize an entire text. So traditionally, we would say you take another student's assignment and you submit it as your own. That would be global plagiarism. Or using platforms like StudiCo, Course Hero. There are others. I just didn't use them, but these 2 are definitely that I've looked into. In other words, it's platforms where students upload information, lecture notes, lecture slides, even tests with memos. I've seen that before. Of every single module, my varsity college modules are there, my NMU modules are there, everything is there, which is actually not allowed. It's not stuff that can be just put out there like that. But anyways, people do that. They sell it to these platforms, and then other students download it and use it as their own. So Turnitin picks that up and will take you to the link in StudiCo. So just to warn you beforehand on that type of thing. So that is obviously not your own work. So it's global, it's a whole thing, and the penalties quite severe with something like that. It's the same as taking somebody else's and submit it as your own. And then obviously anything that's AI generated, the whole essay or parts of the essay, um, will be then, we can see then as global plagiarism. Again, Turnitin has a function. And if we have time today, and I really want to actually show you what it looks like on the lecturer side, because it's important to me. We keep on saying, okay, don't do this, and we can see it, and that type of thing. But the student cannot see and turn it in the AI percentage. So I really want to show you that as well. So anything, if you ask, give, say for instance, ChatGPT a prompt and it generates an essay, and you copy and paste that and then submit it, that obviously is global plagiarism. Patchwork is the traditional form of plagiarism where students used to not paraphrase properly, or taking pieces here and there, or then as if it's group work, that's one specific student has taken the information from StudiCode, but others don't. So that type of thing, that is, it's something that each lecturer will have to look at, and how they deal with it specifically. Incremental, it's small pieces. I will show you an example of what I would consider, but it depends on the module, it depends on the program, it depends on the faculty and all kinds of things. So it's small amounts, and you really need to now consider, am I going to see this as plagiarism or not? And then self-plagiarism, because, sorry, just to get back, usually when we paraphrase, anything up to six, sometimes I set my Turnitin into 7 words, anything up to say 6 words, let's just play it safe, that is marked as exactly the same as a source would not be regarded as plagiarized content. But when you get over that, then we will consider it, because often we start sentences the same way, or whatever the case may be. So but that is all. Also, it depends on the lecturer. I cannot make a call on that. I can't say that lecturers have to do it like that. That is not what I'm saying. It is just, we have to then look at, are we going to regard it as plagiarism or not? Self-plagiarism is more the case of postgrad students who have published an article and they would want to refer to themselves what they've published before, and they don't do that. That would mean, in other words, you become a source, and you're not your own person anymore, and you have to still reference yourself, because it's not about you as the person anymore. It's about the source and the information coming from the source. And if you don't do that, then that's self-plagiarism. So just to touch on quickly, why do students plagiarize? So before ChatGPT and all those wonderful platforms, generative AI, we would say it is more a case of, it is not that intention. It's not, it used to be, I would most of the time not be intentional. In other words, it's accidentally happened, in the sense of students didn't know how to reference, or didn't know how to paraphrase, or how to take note, or do it incorrectly, do the referencing incorrectly, or they don't understand the content and the paraphrasing is not correct, or very poor time management skills and research skills of not having enough time, and then you skip that. So there's a good way of avoiding that type of thing. So as soon as you start researching, record your references there and then. Whatever, if you use Harvard, use the referencing. What if you use automatic referencing in Word, or you use Zota or Cite4Me, or postgrad students using EndNote or Mendeley or whatever. Note immediately, even before you've started the writing process. If you just in the drafting and planning, where you do research and you take notes, put that reference there immediately. I'm a manual referencer. I'm an old school type of thing, I'm sorry to say, but I open, say for instance, if I prepare slides, my first thing would be the introduction slide. The second one is the reference list, because you do tend to forget these types of things. Gino, you want to say something?
Yes, Sonia. I think that where we are right now, like, because a lot of people are also chatting and sending me messages, like I'm getting DMs, which is lovely. And thank you for everyone for being so engaging. I think that one of the important things here is because for us, literally, our pen at university and as researchers or professionals going forward now, right, is Microsoft Word. I would strongly suggest that you learn how to use the referencing tab in Microsoft Word. It creates a literal library of all of those things or sources that you've consulted or put into your library. You can literally then just do one or two clicks and you will import that reference into your writing. If you don't know what I'm speaking about, go onto YouTube and type in referencing with Microsoft Word. I promise you, it is a game changer, and a lot of the things that we are so fearful and anxious of will literally disappear because we can click it away. Back to you, Sonia.
Okay, thank you, Gino. Yes, definitely. I definitely agree with Gino there. The only thing is with that type of thing, if you have a constricted type of referencing format that you have to follow, then you often have to, because Harvard has got so many versions, you have to. So I say this in with NMU, it's not really the problem, but if for Varsity College, and I work for EduVars as well, they've got very constricted referencing styles, and that then you have to go edit. So for instance, there's brackets around the dates in the reference list with Harvard through Word, but you're not allowed to use them with those types of referencing systems. So that's the only thing. You still need to edit it. But yes, obviously it makes your life a whole lot better. All right. Okay, so just that was just on that. I'm not going to really ponder on this type of thing. The whole thing is time management is to avoid. So even if you use a referencing system like automatic referencing, whatever form you use, is very important that you record it immediately on that platform while you are doing your research. The other sort of little downfall is because I see that in the reference the reference list and the in-text referencing, if you don't know how to do it in Word properly or correctly, then it's going to give you incorrect references in your text or your reference list. So you need to know how to reference then specifically correctly as well. Right, so that is on time management. We're not going to deal with this. So obviously everything boils down to academic honesty, academic integrity. So just I'm going to just leave you there with generative AI as well. So plagiarism has changed completely since generative AI has come into play, because it's become deliberate. There's no two ways about that. You are accidentally have used ChatGPT. There's no accident by using that. You deliberately go onto the platform, you type in a prompt, you take that information, you put it in your there is no two ways. With other plagiarism, we would still say oftentimes it's not intentional. So three ways that we can then avoid, or that you have to apply to avoid plagiarism, would be to paraphrase properly into your own words, not the specific words of the text, but the idea of the source. And then obviously using direct quotes or paraphrases as in-text references. In Harvard, we have to use the in-text references. We do not use footnotes like in the law system, Orbiter, and so on. And then obviously all your in-text references must reflect in the reference list at the end. So most of the times of the drafts that I do see, except if you're a postgrad student, is usually a reference list that students have to use. So there's a difference between a reference list and a bibliography. And a reference list, everything that's referenced in your text, all your sources, you have to show in your reference list. Bibliography means sources that you've consulted as well, but you didn't necessarily use them in the text. That would be a bibliography. But if you use a reference list, it's everything that you have used. That means if you used one source, and I say it because I've seen it a couple of times, and so it sounds silly, but it's something that students get confused. If I say you have to put all your sources that's in the text in the reference list, I've seen students that put one source 5 times in the reference list because they refer to it 5 times in the text. So no, it's once. You use, if you've used the source 20 times in the text, it's fine. You're only going to mention that same source once in your reference list. Right. Again, be organized, start early time management, record all your information properly in whatever system you are going to use, paraphrase properly, reference all your sources. And if you do not know how to do it, if you really, there are people that can help you. We can help you. Submit your draft through to the Academic Literacies Writing Programme. Often people have their own writing centers, maybe in the department. Go and ask for help. Say to your lecturer, but I don't know, or your librarian or people, or contact us or whatever. I'm going to give you a link also to Nelson Mandela's referencing system. I'm not going to give you any other sources there for that. That is a perfect solution for all your problems as well, to go and see, and it helps you to reference any type of source. A little bit of sources on avoiding paraphrasing. We're not going to go, on plagiarism. So you can go and play around. I will make the slides available. I will put the slides on the chat afterwards. I will attach it just so you can access it whenever you want to. We need to look at paraphrasing before we get to referencing. So I'm going to go over this very quickly. Paraphrasing is not easy. So I tell students over and over, if you think it's easy, you're doing it wrong. There is a little bit of trick, but once you that little light bulb has gone up, then you will do it. Then it's sort of that click, that switch that clicked, and then you would know how to do it properly. So the whole thing, like I said before, is that it's not taking the words, it's taking the idea. So what students often do, they copy and paste and then try and paraphrase from there, and then it's haywire and whatever. First step of paraphrasing is you need to understand what you are reading. You cannot paraphrase effectively. You will never be able to paraphrase it. It will never have a coherent structure, whatever you're trying to say in your paragraph or in your whole text, if you haven't understood what you have read. So you cannot go from there. You need to go and look up. We've got all kinds of sources these days to clarify concepts. Look it up in your textbook. Go and Google. Um, just don't use the Google definition or whatever, or information that comes from Google that just pop up, that first thing that comes up in Google. Don't use that as a source. We avoid that type of thing because it's not a credible source. But it's just for your understanding. For this, you can use ChatGPT. There are things that you can use ChatGPT for as a student. We're not saying don't use it, but here it's a very good example to understand concepts, simplifying text, that type of thing that you understand. For that, you can use it. There are no blurred lines, though. You are not allowed to take that simplification or that clarification from ChatGPT and use it in your text, though. Then students sometimes would say, okay, well, I've paraphrased what ChatGPT has said. And then we say, okay, no, that's also not going to work, because why? ChatGPT is considered as a source like Wikipedia. It's not a credible source. The information, we cannot guarantee that it is true. It does produce false references. I've seen it now last semester with marking from other institutions. literally going into each one and go test it and see that it's all false references. So that's a severe form of plagiarism, to provide a false reference. All right, so for that, use GPT. Always then take that main idea that you want to use in your own text and record the reference immediately wherever you are going to do your referencing. Know what you want to do with it. So there, the planning process is vital. We're not dealing with the writing process today, but the planning process before the writing is vital while you're doing, or before you're doing research even, doing that mind map to identify your key ideas. Then you will know what to do with what you're reading. It's not just blindly going onto Google and you start reading and researching. It's being focused and knowing what you are going to look for and knowing what you want to do with what you just found that you might use. Also, then look at what was the author's attitude. If you refer back, the attitude, or how did this author see what you are writing on specifically, or your point of view of the topic. Always when we refer to our authors, use simple reporting verbs. I often see, and that is ChatGPT, exuberate. Smith exuberates. I don't use exuberate, so please don't use exuberate, because unless you're a postgrad student or like purport, that postgrad level, use those types of verbs. Use your state and your argue and declare and whatever the case may be. Just your plain verbs, because that those fancy verbs that nobody knows what it means, um, comes then specifically, either it was copied and pasted and the student, and on first year level, it's very unlikely the student will use exuberate. And then, or it's ChatGPT, a very, very big indication of ChatGPT. Phrase your ideas in a way that it means the same as your original source. We cannot change the meaning, but we can use it for different purposes. So, for instance, if you are the source is opposed against something, but you want to use it for something, or a neutral objective or whatever, you may do that, but you cannot change the meaning. It's just you need to fit it into your own writing. Subject-specific jargon, we never, ever will paraphrase. An indication of the use of a paraphrasing tool like Woolbot, or using Grammarly as a paraphrasing tool, would be that jargon would be paraphrased. Say, for instance, in education, there's the term scaffolding. So scaffolding will never be paraphrased ever, but paraphrasing tools will paraphrase it, and then it sounds weird. And that is often how a person pick up a paraphrasing tool that was used, which is also not allowed. You have to do it yourself. You need to be able to close the text and know what you are going to write. Again, it's the idea, not the words, and link to your argument in your own paragraph. And then you need to check, did I still do exactly the same thing? With paraphrasing, yes, you can use synonyms. It is just not allowed, or it's still plagiarism when you copy and paste the whole sentence and you just change one word with another word. Then it's still plagiarism. You need to take the idea, not the words. You can use a sentence, you change it from active to passive voice, for instance, or nominalization, either a verb, change it into a noun, or a noun to a verb, that type of thing. That is possible also with paraphrasing. Then obviously, when you paraphrase and you do your writing, the first thing that you need to do all the time is obviously in-text reference. So there's two ways of how we can in-text reference, and that would be, besides direct quotes and paraphrases, but firstly, when our author or authors are outside the brackets and part of your sentence in, I think they call it a narrative quote, then, but I don't want to complicate with terminology, yeah? Just say, when your authors are part of your sentence, like in the first example under direct quote, then our authors are not inside the brackets. A mistake I often see that students make. Then they are outside the brackets, and only the date will be inside the brackets. Direct quotes always in Harvard must have a page number. Note here, the referencing that I've used here is according to NMU's referencing system that I will show you as well when we go how to access that. So you will see Harvard has different, and also like the automatic referencing system in Word, might put, well, actually, I know for a fact they would put a comma and a P for the page number and then the page number. So that is why mine is different. It is according to NMU. Or there would be a space before the page number. It doesn't matter if your department, your lecturer, or you want to use Word referencing, and you're allowed to do that. It does not matter what format you use. It's about the consistency. So don't use the comma, P, and the page number in one, and then the colon in another one, or not a space before the page number, and then the next one there's a space. That is inconsistent referencing. Keep it consistent at all times. So that's the one form of in-text referencing when your authors are outside the brackets. Then, of course, in the second example, the paraphrased paragraph, where we put our whole reference at the end of the sentence, where all the authors will be inside the brackets, comma, with your date. And if you are using page numbers for paraphrases, you have to be consistently using page numbers with every single one of them. You can't just use it for one and then on the website you can't find a page number. You will have to state then there's no page number. So that is the problem with that. With direct quotes, you have to have page numbers. When you're on an undergrad level, like a first year or second year or so, I just tell my students, with paraphrases, just leave the page number. But with direct quotes, you have to, because it can overcomplicate referencing as well. But you can put page numbers there. We will get back to how are you going to incorporate these references later on. So I'm not going to go over what is allowed for AI and so on. You can go over it. There's a specific way how to reference ChatGPT, for instance, as open AI if you have used it and you declare it. Wherever you've used it, even if you just clarified concepts or simplified the text for understanding, you need to clarify it or declare it, sorry. And this would be the way how to do that. So when we are citing or referencing, our in-text references is only providing a brief identity of the source. So it's the minimum information that we can give. And that is always, the minimum is the author and the date. And that's the bare minimum. The reference list provides all the information. So on that, in your in-text references, if you have authors, then all your in-text references will look exactly the same. Doesn't matter what type of source you are referencing, whether it's a website, an online journal, a printed journal, a textbook, a government site, an organization, it doesn't matter. That is when there is an author. Then it will all be the minimum information, author, and date as an in-text reference. Where the difference comes in the reference list. You're going to reference them differently in the reference list with all the information that you can use. Always use a consistent citation style. If you use Harvard's, so the problem with Harvard is there's different versions. And the university is not clear on just using one version, for instance. So one department can use different types of versions because of a lecturer's preference, or not even. Lecturers say, okay, well, just Harvard, use Harvard. So the whole thing is to stay consistent at all times. If you use a page number, you state a page number in a certain way, do it consistently. If you use italics for et al., do it consistently. If you use the ampersand inside the bracket, do it consistently. That is the only thing. Again, online citation generators obviously is wonderful. So then when the next question is, when do I reference? When do I know I should reference? So when we deal with ideas and theories and research, and if you know for a fact you have consulted a source, you need to reference it. So the whole thing is usually, I would, this little theme, meme or whatever, did you think of it on your own? If you say yes, then I'm going to ask you, all right, I'll get back. Okay, I'll get back to this just now. Then, okay, obviously, if it's your own information, and there are times that that will happen. Say, for instance, if you provide your own examples, say, for instance, you've asked to write an essay on linguistics and you deal with phonology and you create your own examples there that you want to present. That will not be referenced. It is your own. All right. So, or if you done a postgrad study and you want to refer to what your participants have said, you are still actually referring to your participants, but that is not going to come from a source specifically that you have to say there, Smith 2024, that type of thing. You are saying this is participant one and so on. So if you say, okay, well, I didn't think of it on my own, and then you can say, okay, but is it common knowledge? So common knowledge type of things we also don't reference, like today is Monday, the 19th of August, 2024 is common knowledge, but it's very seldom that we actually have things like that when we deal with academic work. To be safe, reference. Going back to, did I think of it on my own? So students, when they say that, then they often have this thing, they now in second semester in first year or second year, and now they have a certain knowledge base that they did not have when they started out as students, right? So where you are now, you in the second semester, you have so much more knowledge after the first semester. So it's become your own knowledge, right? But so that is the problem. The thing is that when you obtain that knowledge, or when you started as a first year student, or whenever you started the first day on the 15th of February 2024, I think it was, I'm not 100% sure now, you didn't have that knowledge. That's knowledge that you heard in your classroom or through research. And it might be something that you read 6 months ago, but you have that knowledge, you still have that knowledge, and now you're writing it because it's my own knowledge. It will never be your own knowledge. That has come from that thing that you've read 6 months ago. You need to go back to that source and use that reference, or find another source that says exactly the same thing. So that knowledge that you have now, you didn't have. It's not your own knowledge. Your lecturer also gets the knowledge or the information that they put in the slides or the lecturer notes from a source, from a textbook, from something that they researched. So go and look for that information, because that is where your knowledge comes from. It's not your own knowledge. So I hope that clarifies also, because that's often a question that I get asked for students if I flag them for plagiarism, for instance. All right. Okay, so I've dealt with, this is an example of the two ways of in-text references, where you put the reference at the end of the sentence, the first one. Note that the full stop goes after the closing bracket. There's only the two authors. We're dealing here with two authors specifically. And as you can see in the first example, when both authors go inside the brackets, there is the ampersand, that little curly thing. It's an abbreviation of and. So some referencing tools or some departments use the AND inside the brackets. That is also something that you have to sort out with your lecturer. How do they want it? I do it here, like I say, according to NMU's referencing guidelines that's on the system. All right. The other thing is just, yeah, don't use the ampersand in one and then an AND in the next one where you use the reference at the end of the sentence. However, when we use the authors, as part of your sentence and we take them outside the bracket, they become part of the sentence, then we have to use AND at all times. We cannot use the ampersand ever, because an ampersand is an abbreviation. We cannot use abbreviations in academic writing. There's no such thing. It's informal language, and we're always formal and objective. So this is then example of how to use your reference at the end and how to use it in the beginning, for instance. Your reference can, for instance, be in the beginning, in the middle of the sentence as well. That would be a way how to change your referencing, that you don't use exactly the same type of format in a paragraph. It's just to change the way your paragraph looks, so we avoid repetition. In the reference list, again, NMU's version with in our reference list, here's two authors, as you can see. It's Smith with your initials. So going back to, the in-text references, no initials, no names, no titles ever in in-text references, ever. So only the surname or surnames, and the date is the minimum, bare minimum that you have to provide. But in your reference list, you have to state, you always start with the first author that's mentioned in the journal article or in the textbook or whatever article you're reading. You start with that person with his or her initials. Yeah, I've used the ampersand, but you can use the AND for Harvard. Again, consistency. Gina, I'll be with you just now. I just want to finish with this quickly. And then your second author, surname, comma, note the punctuation, please. Initial, date, no brackets here because it's the NMU's version. But if you use brackets, consistency the whole time. It is a book. So books must be in italics in the reference list. Full stop. In Harvard, we have to provide the city of publication, not the country. Colon and the publishing house, full stop. So if it's like Cambridge, Oxford, and those types of publishers always have some different city, or let me rather put it like that. They will state Cambridge, UK, for instance, or then they list a whole lot of Cambridges where New York and wherever. I just say always take the first one. Say use then Cambridge, UK, colon, Oxford, or Cambridge University Press, because it can be confusing there. You don't have to state all of them. Yes, Gina?
That's a great point, Sonja. Thank you. I just want to facilitate a couple of the questions here because I think that you actually dealing with these things right now, and it might just be
Okay.
quicker to address them. So Giselle Thomas, hi Giselle. Thank you. You're engaging nicely in the chat. Sonja, the chat is bubbling.
Okay.
Um, so just so that you know, I've answered a lot of the questions, and if there are things, then I will guide you back to them when you are done with the presentation. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So Giselle asks, like, so you've now said like there's an in-text citation, right? But if we look at information longer than 5 to 10 lines, then what happens with the referencing and the in-text formatting of such an instance? So it's a longer piece that's going to be taken from the source.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to answer that, Gina?
No, I'm happy for you too.
Okay. I firstly want to ask what level is the student, because it's going to be important. If it's a postgrad student, yes, by all means, you can use it like that. However, that is something that I haven't mentioned yet. Direct quotes, remember 80 to 90% of your essay or your academic draft must be paraphrased. So if say for instance a first year or so, there's no place for a quote that's so long. Okay, so no, there I would say 1 to 2 short direct quotes at the most per page. But postgrads, yes, most definitely. I'm going to speak under correction here now. I think it's 8, if it's 8 lines, right?
Mhm.
I'm not 100% sure. Then you use that indentation
Yeah, it
for the
becomes
direct quote.
indented, and then the like the in-text reference is there at the bottom of the
Yes.
indented paragraph.
Yes, that is. But now I just need to know what level, because you have to be
Mm,
extremely careful with undergrad type of things. Because if we use too many direct quotes, it's plagiarism because it's not your own work. I have seen drafts that it is just direct quotes. The student was literally, I'm going to say, too lazy to do anything else. They just copied and pasted. They in-text referenced
mm.
everything with page numbers and everything. But I flagged the student for plagiarism because that just was one of my own students. But because it's not paraphrased. So I don't know if the student can just, or the person can just maybe clarify.
Put in the level. So that's you, Giselle. Sonia, maybe also like just to just sort of reiterate this to the students, right? Like how we work at Academic Literacies Writing Program is we want you to be able to use other people's work in your writing, and their work is literally their writing. So this entire sessions and sessions like these are to enable you to do the appropriate thing when you're using somebody else's outputs.
Yeah.
It's their work, it's their research. So then when you put this out there, it's your output, it's your research. So people will always be referring to what's been written as, oh, this one said that after looking at something else. Right? So you are contributing to a whole stream or thread of a conversation. So just be very careful, because the point of academic writing is that we are able to place you in that thread. Where did your part in this conversation come from? And who were you listening to get to this place that you're putting down on paper? So you still have to put it out there in your writing, but you're using other people's work. So that's
Yes.
that's the tricky part here. Thank you,
Yes.
Sonia.
I think that is a very valid point, Gina. Thank you very much for that. That is well put. In other words, it's not it's your writing. It's not, and that is why you're not allowed to use generative AI to create something for you, or use Squallbot to paraphrase for you, because it's yours. It's your writing.
Hmm.
And that
Sonia, she's just clarified. She said that she's doing honors. And then
okay.
there's another follow-up question there. So if the assignment has a reference list but doesn't have in-text references, because now you said 80%,
Okay.
right?
I'm
So
not
people
100%
people
sure.
yeah. So like I would just say a reference list just points you to things that were consulted in the creation of that assignment, which is what you're using to share your perspective as a researcher or budding academic or young researcher, whatever, right? When you say something, I think what Ms. McLachlan is saying is very important. Like, so if that 80% is going to be paraphrased, then what you want to do is use the direct quotations in there as like what is a definition of something, right? Something that's immutable, that's going to be the basis of what you are writing about going forward. So it's almost like a pillar of how you are looking at what you are researching and now giving your perspective of. So just be very careful about that. If you are using direct referencing or quotations, make sure that it's the important stuff and not that people said this, because who are people and what did they say? Okay, back to you, Sonia.
Okay, Gina, I'm looking at the question. I just want to understand it properly. Firstly, I want to ask, why is there not in-text? Okay, so first, let me put it like that. So it's not only direct quotes that we reference paraphrases as well. So most of your assignment must be paraphrased, so there must be in-text references for your paraphrases, and that then will go in your reference list. So I do not understand how you would have a reference list and not in-text references. So if you could, I don't want to misunderstand your question. It's a very important point, Mr. Ramota. I'm not 100% sure how. If you can just clarify that question for me, so I can understand. Is it your own assignment or is it a source? That I'm not 100% sure what you refer to there, but I hope it answered your question in the sense that if you have a reference list, you must have in-text references. That there's no two ways about it. You have to have in-text references if there's a reference list. If it's a reference list, and for undergrads, you usually use reference lists, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's not even even if you consult it and you put it reference list, you need to have in-text references for a reference list. Right.
Great.
I hope.
Sonia, don't forget to just move your cursor because we're not seeing the PowerPoint any longer.
Yes.
Thank
No,
you.
I've
That's
opened the
perfect.
chat now. Okay. So I can also just see. All right. So quickly, just to go very basic. We'll get to, I think, with the indentation, with the referencing, sorry, just going back to the Giselle. Remember when it's longer, so for postgrad studies, yes, you can use longer quotes, but just make 100% sure if it's like, I think it's 8 lines. If it's 8 lines and more, then you direct quoted, you don't use your quotation marks then, but you say if for instance you type this and this, I said this, and then you want to give your direct quote, then you indent, you use that tab button, that everything your quote goes underneath one another as that indentated type of form, and then you put depends on if you refer to the top already to your source, then you're going to refer to Smith said this 2024, and then you give your quote. But then you use the indentation. But you can't do that with just 3 lines, for instance. I hope that answered your question there. All right. So book sources, journal sources, newspaper articles, websites. If there's an author, you will always use the author surname, the date. If it's a direct quote, you have to use the page number. So just an example of different sources, it will always be author and date. But what now, direct quote, sorry, would be then the page number is always needed, like in this example, where you use. Just on direct quotes as well, it is not good academic practice to start a sentence or a paragraph with a direct quote directly. Rather, like in this case, as Strauss explains, and then your direct quote. In other words, not start off with tourists need places to stay, and then you put a reference at the end of the sentence if it's a direct quote. It's better academic practice to rather introduce that direct quote and use it like in this example. Indirect quoting, again, either the references at the end of the sentence, or it's in the beginning of, where the author is outside the brackets and you only state the date. It's just examples what it would look like in practice. So we've looked at 2 authors already, but in Harvard, when we have 3 or more authors, we always have to state all of the authors. Doesn't matter whether there's 10 of them, which could happen with journal articles. Then you have to state all of them the first time that you refer to them, but the second time you may use et al. Et al mean and others, Latin term for and others. So you literally say Smith and others. We do use et al though. Also, different formats in Harvard here, either just without italics or with a comma and then the et al or an italics. Again, be very, very consistent with what you are using, and it's only with 3 or more authors. So with 2 authors, you have to state both authors all the time. Something that I do see that students do, there's 2 authors and then they use et al. You can't do that, only with 3 or more authors. We never ever use et al in the reference list. There you have to state all the authors in Harvard. Okay, so 3 authors would be then, like 2 authors, you use that and or the ampersand inside the brackets before your last author. Always. Something that I do see as well is that students just put a comma before the last author. You always have to show either the ampersand or the and. And then inside, when it's part of your sentence, always the and before the last author with your date. In this case, Erasmus, Rudansky, Kloppers, and Strydom must be mentioned, all of them the first time, but the second time you can just use Erasmus et al. With comma with the date. Just thinking in the reference list, yes, I just want to go over here with the reference list. You have to state all the information, all the authors. In other words, first surnames, then initials with comma and so forth until before your last author, where you use either the ampersand or the AND consistently the same. This book has editors. It's a textbook. So EDS for editors, but when I show you the link to the referencing system, then you can determine how to use editors or not, or chapters of books, or whatever the case may be. Date. Books are always in italics, the names. We have to state, we never state a first edition as first edition in the reference list. But from second edition, you always have to, and textbooks often have different editions. Now, the confusing thing is that often there's a whole list of things like revised printing and revised whatever. We usually look, and it can be extremely confusing. We usually look at just edition. So there could be a second edition, third imprint, something like that. Rather just use the date of the second edition. All right. Because you don't know in the end what must you use or what not. So you always state the edition from second edition, not ever the first edition. Then obviously the place of publishing, colon, and the publishing house. Online journals, again, exactly the same way as with books, as in-text references, whether it's paraphrased or a direct quote. Just with a direct quote, you will use a page number. The two different ways. If it's more than three or more authors, you can use et al. The second time. And this is example then of paraphrase or then using it as a direct quote. Note that here with a direct quote, when you use like the bottom example, rather introduce your direct quote. Okay. Then as an entry in the reference list, your exact same source. Then all your authors before your last author, always the ampersand or the and. Yeah, very important with journal articles. Doesn't matter whether online, printed, DOIs or not, website journal articles. We always state the date, obviously the author's information, the date, then the article's name comes after that, not in italics. After the article, we state the journal's name, always in italics. In Harvard, comma, the 56 and the 4 in brackets refer to 56 will be the volume number, the 4 is the issue number. Colon, and then the page numbers. If you use the automatic referencing in Word, you will get a comma there with a P and the page numbers. Again, consistency is key. It's an online journal article. As soon as we see the DOI, we are going to see it as a credible source. So then you have to supply, say it's online, DOI is your URL literally then. And you're in Harvard, we have to state when you have accessed the source. It's not for your lecturer to check up if you've done it 2 hours before submission. No, it is because these types of sources or websites are always or often updated. And now we can see, okay, well, the source was accessed in 2021, but other information were added in 2024, and now the information is slightly different or something edited or added on. Just on the volume and the issue number, not all journals have volumes and issue numbers. If you can't find that, I really hope we've got time for that. I just want to show you an actual journal article online. then if you can find it, then yes, use it. But sometimes you will have a volume number and not an issue number. Don't fake the number. Okay, so leave it. Just put the colon and the page numbers. Or it might be a quarterly journal, and then the date would be, say, December 2023. And that is what you're going to use after your journal's name, like comma, December 2023, colon, and the page numbers. Note, page range, the whole full page range of the journal article must always be mentioned in the reference list. If you've used page 1603 in the text as a direct quote, you're not going to state in the reference list 1603. You're going to show the first page to the last page of the journal article, not the journal. So that is also important information for your reference list. When we use websites, and I actually want to go more to, I don't think I've got it in here now, but be very careful with websites. I try to discourage students to use websites unless it's organization pages, like, for instance, World Health Organization or university sites. We would regard that then as credible sources. In other words, it ends on edu or ac, and government sites ending on gov. So those types of sites often don't have authors. They publish under the, say, Department of Health of South Africa, publish an article. We would consider that as a credible article, but it doesn't have an author, which is then fine. Then you have to use the website name. Okay. And not the web page or then the article's name, but the website, which you will find often in the URL if you're not sure where to find that. So we would use these, then use, for instance, World Health Organization 2024 as our in-text reference, and you're going to start your reference list also with World Health Organization or Department of Health 2024, or whatever the case may be, if there is no author. With all other types of websites, be careful if there's no authors. There are ways to scrutinize websites for credible, if they're credible or not. Usually, it depends here also what, it's very difficult to say, but in general, we don't consider blogs as credible content. And how do you identify it? All those nice looking pages on the internet that's got pictures and has got all kinds of things, no referencing, and it looks like credible content, but rather not use it. Rather go look for that journal article that you as a registered student have got access to all the databases that's available through the university. Or then if you have to, Google Scholar is another option. Okay. So here, like if it's an organization, we will use then the World Health Organization for the first time with WHO, because we can use it as an abbreviation in brackets. And the second time you refer to World Health Organization, you can just use the abbreviation and the date. So websites here, for instance, this HR Future, I've just given it as use it as an example. So for instance, it's more, I would say, maybe not such a credible source, but if you want to then use it, or you can use it, your lecturer said, okay, yes, you can use something like this. We use the website's name, HR Future 2021, or according to HR Future. These types of websites can be complicated when we reference it in the reference list. It can be different. You will have to go in your referencing guide and see how we can reference the different types of pages that you find on the internet. In this case, we use the website's name as our the beginning of our source in the reference list, the date, and then obviously the article's name, going beyond the mask, but the emerging world of work needs for leaders. This article has a date when it was published. Then we can put the date, then you have to put the date there. But if it doesn't have a date as the article, you use the website's date that it was last updated. And if you scroll right to the bottom, that C in the circle must show an updated date like 2024. Use that date then as your date right there after the website, that 2021. Always state online in square brackets, available at. This also differ in Harvard, available at and colon, or just available or whatever, as long as you just consistent all the time. URL, the link, obviously, that if you enter there, it should show blue, that your lecturer can go access that link and see if it is a valid source. And then obviously the access date in square brackets. Okay, consistency is key here. However, if you say accessed on or just accessed or whatever. Images, there is a specific way you have to reference your images as a figure, but I'm not going to ponder here or stay here for a long time. It can get very complicated, but there again, go and look at the referencing guide specifically. So references, what is important, you have to number and you have to label images in your text and give it a reference, where it comes from. If you use Google Images, for instance, be careful, but say, for instance, if you use it for copyright and that type of thing, but if you use it, then you have to rather click on the Google image and go to the website that published that image, and rather use that website as your reference. All right. When you use images from PowerPoint and Word, then, as far as I know, you do not have to reference it. It will automatically come with a little reference in itself as well. I speak under correction, but one of the institutions I work for don't use set where our students don't have to reference specifically. Yes, Gina.
Hi, Sonja. I'm glad
Yes.
we're here because a lot of what we tend to insert into our academic writing efforts are graphics, right? And the
Yes.
graphics normally tell another story. So then people paraphrase looking at what's in the graphic. So it's almost like they're reading data. So 300 people responded. Of the 300, 200 were males and 100 were females, right? So then I'm concerned because people just also like would copy and paste these without then making sure that the little attribution box which you've now referred to, I think on the slide that would be that figure one. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
you can still put in the data, so the link and when you access that. Okay, so that people know that this isn't something that you've generated. Because if you don't say this came from somewhere, the assumption should then be that you've generated this. But running that through a Turnitin or any sort of thing like that, and I think that we must also move away from just like these plagiarism detectors, right? Because these are academics that you're dealing with, that you're engaging with, who are evaluating you and also teaching you. So very often these people will know where these things come from. And if you haven't attributed that, that could count against you in terms of your final mark or evaluation. Okay. It could also count as plagiarism. So just be careful. I think the rule of thumb here is don't allow any questions about the source of your resource or text or research. Don't allow any questions. Put all the information that you can there. I think what Ms. Lachlan is saying, this is the way to put that information into your writing. Back to you, Sonja.
Okay, thank you, Gino. Yes. So yes, when we're dealing with graphics or tables and that type of thing, and say for instance, you've taken some information, but you've put your other types of info, you've adapted it. You need to state there where it comes from, but you've adapted it. So for instance, it's a graph of some sort, a line graph or a pie chart or something. And if you created your own one, then obviously you're going to state own source or whatever. But still, you need to always state figure one, give it a name, your own name usually. And all these things obviously have to go into a list of figures and yes, list of figures right with your underneath your table of contents. But that is another type of thing, and we're not going to really go so much into it. But the fact of the matter is you have to state figure 1, colon, give it a name, and then that SA stands for sine anno, which means no date. So there's no date that they could find or whatever. So you have to state there, I couldn't find a date, or ND for no date. The bracket there that wasn't concluded there is the source. In other words, I got it from WHO, 2024. So, and all of that information must also then go into the list of figures. So you can't just leave it out. So if you've adapted the information, like in a table, for instance, a table, that's the only thing that we will label on top and not on the bottom, like with figures. All kinds of images, line graphs, pie charts, whatever, we always label on the bottom as figures. But tables are the only things that we will label as table 1 on the top of the table. And that we can often adapt. But then you have to state how you've adapted it, or you just state on the bottom, adapted from, and you give the source as well. Right, so yeah, this is another type of workshop, I guess.
Yeah. Sonia, just heads up, we've got 9 minutes.
Okay.
I don't know
Oh,
if people
yes.
want to stay
Yes,
longer, but I think that if we can do the 9 minutes and then
yes,
maybe.
yes. Yes. Okay. I just want to go into the Harvard reference list, obviously. There are a couple of things, and I see that. I see it when we do look at drafts. I see it students dealing with this type of thing or writing their own reference list. Remember, always has to be in alphabetical order. So what sometimes happen that I've noticed is that students use an automatic referencing tool, but then the add, which is automatically then in alphabetical order. There's no indent. So with Harvard, no indentation, no fancy details like bullet points or numbers or fancy little stars or anything, nothing. Space between each entry. So the automatic referencing tool, so for instance, in Word does it perfectly, but now student adds on another reference, and then it's not in alphabetical order anymore. It's now on the bottom and it's not part of the list. So be careful of that type of thing. Remember, you can edit even if it's automatic referencing, and you must edit it. Right, so it must be in alphabetical order according to all the sources that you've used. In other words, not under like make a heading their books and then you list your books, or journals and you list your journals. No, all your sources underneath one another in alphabetical order. Not going to go into this. This would be an example then of a Harvard reference list. In alphabetical order, as you can see, and the different types of sources. You can see everything neat underneath each other. This link here is just very small, is the link to the Harvard referencing style in the NMU's library. Okay, I'm going to go over that just now. I think Gino has mentioned what the Academic Literacies Writing Programme is about. There's also a link to the form. If you want to submit your draft, he has explained what it's all about. This is the feedback link that I've put right on the beginning of the chat. Please, guys, if I can start asking you, I just want to access that link to the referencing site quickly. But if you can just start completing this Google form just to give us some feedback. It is important, be honest. If you feel like you haven't learned anything, be honest about it and say why. Or, don't just be negative because you feel negative. It is be honest about it, because we use this type of thing for improving our workshops, and I need honest feedback. It is anonymous. Just want to go into this quickly.
Sonia, as you were just speaking about the feedback form, I just want to also tell people that we are funded by the government, okay, by the Department of Higher Education and Training, and this is seen as something in addition to what you pay your fees for, basically, right? But we find it to be an integral part of helping you to become young researchers or better researchers, but also professionals out there in the organizational field. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is create all of these opportunities for you to improve and to self develop. So we need you to fill out this feedback form. And I think that the feedback form, Angelo, you still there? If Angelo is going to put the link to the feedback form in there, we've got 5 minutes before we are done with the session. So I'd really appreciate, not me alone, we would really appreciate if each of you who are still here could just click on that link and complete that evaluation form. Let us know what was good. Let us know what wasn't as good. And what worked and what could work for you. So we're looking for suggestions as well. Thank you, Sonja.
Thanks, Gino. So that link, I think when maybe when we transformed this whole thing in a nice little
It's there.
PowerPoint, yeah, it was there, but it wouldn't. It gave me an error message, so I'll just have to look into it. But anyways, if you go onto your portal, the student portal, staff portal, and you go to the library, so you go to the library icon. And you go down. So obviously I've referred to the online databases. It's not something that we're going to look into today, but there you will find all your credible content as well to use as a registered student. If you go down a little bit, you will see here's a little blocky thingy, reference styles, and that will take you then to the Harvard referencing style. So this is all that you really need. Like I say, it's very specific stylistically. So, but it gives you all kinds of, yeah, also how to reference an image, government publications, ebooks, journal articles, whether it's printed, online, DOI, or website, or whatever, magazine, newspaper, all kinds of things, theses, conference papers, proceedings from conferences. I'm not going to go into it. Go play around with this. And yeah, that is where I'm going to rather end off. Got a lot more to say, but I'm rather going to leave it as is. And then maybe if there's questions still, anything. I don't know if we've dealt with all the questions. Thank you, Gino, for all answering all the questions.
Wait, first, never mind. Thank you, Gino. I want to say thank you, Sonja, first, Miss Lachlan. You've done an excellent job. And I think you've literally illustrated your years of like expertise and experience here at the university and how you are able to facilitate this. Um, People who are still here, we've got a few minutes left. I see people are rapidly exiting now. This is your opportunity to speak directly to one of us and get something resolved. Are there any questions? Sonia, should we just open up this entire thing?
Yes, I've opened up. There's something that I remember now, how to integrate your sources, actually.
Hmm. So
So I
basically,
don't know
when
if
we
that,
said about opening up, sorry, Sonia, it's
yes.
just like we've made it possible for people to now say what they need to say. Sorry, I might have put my hand up again. How do we enable everybody access to the camera and the microphone? So if there are any questions, you can just ask now. Okay?
Did you open it up, Gino?
I don't
No.
know.
Okay. No, let me open.
There we go. Camera, allow,
Okay.
and mic, allow. So if anybody has a question, you don't have to come on with your camera if you don't want to, but you can come on with your microphone. Go for it. We are here. If we look at, oh, there's a question, Sonia, while anyone's mustering up the courage to actually engage. Is it advisable to use sources without a date of publication? Mm.
Okay. Firstly, so it can happen, I guess, but so but there's a whole, I can have a whole lecture also on credible sources.
Exactly.
And the thing is, the more credible something is, the more information you will find on the authors, number one, and you will definitely have no doubt on where the date is. So I'm going to a journal article. So credible academic journal article will always have a date. So if you're struggling to find a date, so it depends now, is it if it's a website and the article doesn't have a date, you can use the website's updated date. If you scroll down right to the bottom of a website, let me just see if I can use this. I'm going to use this example. Can you all, sorry, can you see this or not?
Not yet.
No, I haven't. I've opened a couple of things that I was going to use,
Hmm.
but we've run out of time.
I just want to maybe say, like, to that point that you were saying now, because you're speaking about like what's credible. I think that your job as a researcher, as an academic writer at university, or as a professional, right, is to give information that other people can access, and they don't have a question about, like, okay, so who said this is clear,
Yes,
but
yes.
when did they say this? Were they working somewhere? Is this before they studied? Is this before they were this person, like, like a published author
Mm,
or whatever? Your evaluator is always going to have questions. Your job as the academic writer is to write without creating opportunities for questioning. So if you put all of this information into your writing in the way that Ms. McLachlan has been speaking about now, and like we've been really pushing, right? Then there shouldn't be questions. And there are always other sources out there that you could use that
yeah.
aren't questionable, right?
Yes.
So do
Yes.
your research.
Absolutely.
That comes down to
Absolutely.
that. Sonja?
Absolutely. So I just want to use this as an example. So I've gone on to linguistics here. So for instance, so this was a journal article that I found on linguistics. So you can clearly see it's a boring thing. If you open it up, I'm not going to, there's not enough time now. But we know we can see all the information here. There's a date, there's the people. So if you click on these things, you can actually see where these people work, and there's more than enough information. This is what a journal article will look like. This is something that we can use, right? Going back to, let me just move this thing away. This thing. So this is university site of, let me just look here quickly, California. Although it is, and I think it is more like they're explaining the course that they're giving here. But just looking at this, I wouldn't use it as a source, to be very honest. There's no author here, but like I say, it's probably just an outline of their module. I can't find a date here, so that is what I mean. If you go right down to the bottom of your web page, there should have been a copyright there with a C, should have been a date, actually. There isn't even a date here. There's no reference to sources, as you can see. To be honest, I actually wouldn't even use this as a source. This is just to show you the difference between that and this. So if you can open this obviously as a full text as well. But here you get all the information. There's all your authors. There's the date. There's the publication. It's volume 34 of linguistics. It was published in linguistics and education. Page range. Um, there is no doubt about this. You can see there's the DOI, for instance, that you're going to reference. So if there's not a date and there's not that type of information, with credible content, you will have no doubt what is the date, who are the authors.
Yeah.
You will, inside your source, you will find that they've used references, for instance.
Mm.
So there's not a complete, obviously, draft to this, but you can see there's a reference already
Yeah.
in a look back. So
Sonja?
yes,
Maybe like I think just we're about to leave, but I think that the analogy of like quality assurance,
yeah,
right? Quality assurance is something that you've learned from when you were born. I like this, I don't like this. Why do I like this? Why don't I like that? Right? As you got older now, like we need you to reflect those preferences, but also those choices that you make in your writing. And that's where it comes out that you become a nuanced and more efficient writer, because we can see all of these things that you're putting into your research. Okay, it shows learning, it shows development, it shows questioning. I think that very important for everyone right now is to know that if something is creating questions in your head, and the questions not about necessarily the theory or the point or the perspective that's being shared in that research. Okay. Then like, why is he saying this? Why didn't they do that? You need to be interrogative with whatever you read, and that's normally going to be the perspective that you are able to paraphrase from. Otherwise, you're taking direct links and you're saying this person said that, that person said that, that person said that, right? But when you interrogate those things, then you're like, that person said that, but then that person said that. So then, is it this or is it that, right? Then you questioning, you're arguing, and you're looking for other research to support your argument or your perspective that you want to put out there. Somebody says here, Sonia, I'm just going to read the last uh, uh, comments in the chat. I think the timing for the survey is short, especially if one wants to type on the comment block.
Comment. Okay.
Do it again and just say that I'm doing it again and
Yeah.
I'm filling in there. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Zaza. Thank you, Tokozani. We appreciate that you are doing that. Anybody else who's still online, please complete the survey. It's going to get us money, and then we'll be here next year and we can do this
All
again
the
if you need.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sonia.
Yes, we didn't get to the part, sorry, with the integration of the sources, and that is a very, very important thing that I actually wanted to touch on. I just want for those who are still here. I couldn't find the whiteboard on this now, but I'm not going to waste time for that type of thing. The important part is that if you have one author, you shouldn't actually. That's the one thing. There is a way to avoid that. But say, for instance, you use one author for a whole paragraph, okay? And now you only put the reference at the end of that paragraph. It's not correct. So in other words, that reference shows the last sentence is paraphrased. What about reference? What about the rest? In other words, it's plagiarized, right? So, but how can you now avoid to over-reference? Because yes, we can over-reference. In other words, every single sentence, if it's the same author, it's not correct to reference also every single sentence. But you can't just put your reference at the end of the paragraph. You have to at least remember paragraphs, another workshop, yes, with academic writing and paragraphing. Your paragraph must be 8 sentences, 8 to 10 sentences max, right? So embed and integrate your references, say in the beginning, yeah, in the middle, one or two, if it's a longer paragraph, and then at the end your paragraph. Then you have mentioned that source at least then 3 or 4 times. Not every sentence, but you can't just put it at the end of the sentence. The way to avoid that in any case is, and what you should do, you should research more. So you should actually have different references then in your paragraph, not only one source for a paragraph. Because whatever you're writing on, you have to give more than one person's evidenced opinion, literally, on what you're writing about. You should go find other sources and you integrate them all in your paragraph. Again, you're making a claim, you provide the evidence, you conclude your paragraph. That is how we should write a paragraph. So when that evidence is put there, you must have, like, say, 3 sources that then claim or back up the claim that you made right in the beginning,
Perfect.
if
And I
that
want to
makes
just share
sense.
there also that it makes absolute sense. And that's why when students write or researchers write, the research says, the research isn't speaking, right? You are supposed to be going to
Yeah.
actual authors who've published the research. That says something, but that also points to an individual or a group of researchers that you can then reference as the authors and the people who've made these claims or statements. Okay? When you just say the research says, and you expect us to think, okay, well, A, B, C, D, E, and you speaking about G. I want to know about A, B, C, D, E. And if you haven't at least touched on that and put those sources that informed where you are, you're basically speaking out of nowhere. So be careful about that. Okay. Don't just start from 2024. This research has been going on for a long time, and we just want you to reflect on that research. We're not asking you for something new either if you're an undergrad, right? When we ask for something new, it's only from PhD. So you've got a long way to go for most of you. Okay? Do what you must do, not what you think must be done.
All right, yeah, that's it from me. Any other questions? More questions that we can address? Nothing. All right. Gino, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like, well, seeing as we are saying goodbye, um, we have another session tomorrow night. Okay. Hey,
Yes.
Ange.
Hi.
And tomorrow night is at 6 p.m. It's the same session, but if
Yes.
you attend, you can ask some more nuanced questions. So if anything's like just not clicked for you right now, either send one of us an email, right? Because you can do that. Giselle, I see your response and it's just making me smile. Look.
That's wonderful.
Thank you,
We can
Giselle.
just make a
Uh,
difference in one person.
uh,
I'm happy.
We'll take a photo of this, Giselle. But really,
Thank you.
if you have questions, come tomorrow night. But
Yes.
also, if you can't come tomorrow night, send us an email. We want to do this more with
Yeah.
students. But we want to do this with big groups of students so that we can reach more of you out there. And I know that each one of you knows 5 people who should have been attending here. Tell them about tomorrow night. I'm going to put the link in the chat again. Okay.
Yeah.
Sonja, a few last words. Maybe Angelo first, if you got anything to say from the George campus.
Hmm. Thank you, colleagues. I just wanted to confirm if the students could access the feedback form, but I noticed that they could provide us with feedback. And also if the students can explore the referencing guide, because most of the time when we review assignments, there's a lot of referencing mistakes.
Yeah. The other thing is, sorry, I just wanted to say, there was a question. Yes, I will add the slides on after the session. I will just put it in the chat so that all the students can access it as well. Will that be okay? Or do you want me to email it? Well, it's difficult to email
No,
it
that's
because
no,
it's
it's
all over.
perfect. No, it's
I'll just put
perfect.
it in the chat. Yes.
Yeah, let's just put it in the chat. Everyone remember that this chat is available to you forever from now onwards. Okay,
Yeah.
so you are able to do whatever you need to using the links and the rest of the engagements that we've shared. The copy of this recording will also be available, I think, in about 15 to 20 minutes
Yeah.
after the platform processes. So,
Yeah.
Ms. McLachlan, thank you so much. For
Thank you
us,
very
on behalf
much.
of the ALWP team and the LT CoLab at Nelson Mandela University, we are very proud and honored to have you here. If anybody else wants to say something nice to Mr. McLachlan about the session at the bottom,
Thank you.
now's your
There's
chance.
nice comments that's coming through. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And I just thank you, Gino and Angela, also for your help today. That helped a lot. Because there's so much to say. I can literally continue for another 5 hours, probably. So, but anyways, thank you very much, and for everybody joining and for your feedback and so on. All right.
You
So
guys
again,
tomorrow
yeah,
night, 6 o'clock,
tomorrow
if you
night.
need to.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'm
Thank you,
going to
Sonia. Thank you,
stop the
Angela.
recording quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.